Fitzy and Whipper with Kate Ritchie podcast.
Breaking news over the weekend. Matthew Perry, very, very sad news.
Very sad news. I think it's what everyone was talking about. Of course, he played what some are saying is one of the greatest, comedic characters of all time, Chandler Bing, on Friends. I'm not sure. How many episodes were there in Friends?
Tommy, you across that?
Series.
How many episodes in total? 236 episodes.
Do you know what was fascinating about Friends, though, too, is to see when they started running it on the streaming services, the amount of people that picked it up and said, hey, what's this amazing show, Friends?
Oh, yeah, like a second generation.
Of this
viewers.
Show's amazing.
And I think we were just talking to somebody on the phone when we opened the lines just after 6 o'clock, and as she said, it was kind of like it represented a lot of people's childhoods or their early 20s. That the storyline of all of those friends hanging out, falling in love,
I know,
growing up together. I guess there are a lot of people who would have felt as though they'd grown up with these characters as well. But yes, of course, the news over the weekend that Matthew Perry was found at his home in LA. His parents, who I didn't realise, they were there arriving. Of course, the house surrounded by paparazzi. So even though Mum and Dad weren't together, they presented a united front at the house. And the amount of people who have come out just saying wonderful things about him, talking about his struggles and how brave he was, because he was very open about his addiction issues. Even Adele, I think we've got some audio of her. She was in Vegas over the weekend at her concert dressed as Morticia Adams or something because it was Halloween. She had this to say about him.
This is what I find so strange. I've never met him in my life. He's so open with his struggles with addiction and sobriety, which I think is incredibly, incredibly brave. And just want to say how much I love what he did.
And then she dedicated her song When We Were Young to him.
I didn't realise, so just to get the story or the understanding of what took place, he'd been playing pickleball, right? Which I'm just starting to learn about pickleball. But
I had to ask you what that was.
You did. We had a chat about pickleball this morning, and then I realised it's the fastest growing sport in the States, and everybody loves pickleball.
Say.
So he'd played 2 hours of pickleball, gone home, hopped in the hot tub.
Yes.
As such, but then Tommy, you were saying he'd asked the maid or the helper,
his assistant,
to run down the street and get a couple of bits and pieces.
Yeah, run errands for a couple of hours.
So he could have passed away in the hot tub sort of early on, and then 2 hours later was found, or
at around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I think.
Right. Okay. So closer to when possibly the PA got home. I didn't realise too. I'm watching the project last night. They went on to say that he'd done 6,000 hours or so in AA. So the work that he'd done on himself, 30 years in rehab, but 14 surgeries for opioid addiction, which was unbelievable.
I didn't realise that.
And then in 2019, he had a 2% chance of survival when he was in hospital because the body was breaking down so much. And that's why when I mentioned at the start of the show, that quote from him, he said, if I was to die, it would be a shock but not a surprise. So he sort of knew the state of what the addiction had done
that he was
to
very
his
unwell.
system. But I think also, almost in a nice way, last year it was that his own book came out, his autobiography, which became very popular. So, I mean, I think a lot of people who weren't across the Matthew Perry story learned a hell of a lot about Matthew Perry through the success of the book and the bravery he had to share some of his stories, which was in the book last year when it came out.
It was very sad news.
But for the Friends fans, you're right, Kate Ritchie. I mean, the way you started this conversation about how people were saying he's one of the great comedic actors, and he probably never understood how many people he made laugh for such a long time. Celebrating the life of Matthew Perry after the devastating news over the weekend.
It was tragic,
wasn't it? 52?
54.
Was he 54? 54, far too young. 2 or 4, far too young.
Found over the weekend in his home. We were talking about it on the show earlier, and you were saying, Whip, that he had an assistant or someone that obviously worked in the home, that he sent out on some errands. He'd also played, which I didn't even know what it was, pickleball. He'd been on the court for 2 hours, come home. Got in the hot tub, and then was found after an emergency call at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And look, everybody, so many people, obviously all of his famous friends and people that we know about, there's been an outpouring of love, not only for Matthew and his talents and his kind of comedic talents, but also what a good guy he was and how much he did for other people. He was very brave and coming out talking about his own addictions, which he'd struggled with, I think, for over 30 years. This is actually Matthew speaking when his autobiography came out last year, talking about people that he'd helped.
For some reason, it's obviously because I was on Friends, more people will listen to me. So I've got to take advantage of that. I've got to help as many people as I can.
He goes on to say, this is a quote that has also been floating around, but when I die, as far as my so-called accomplishments go, it would be nice if Friends were listed far behind the things I did to try and help other people. I know it won't happen, but it would be nice.
Interesting to read that in 2019, due to his health situation, he was given 2% chance of survival. He's had 14 operations due to the addiction that he had. But can I bring up a bigger... Like when I see the world of some celebrities and I see the trouble that they have, you can't help but go back to the moment prior to Friends when he was just a guy who was doing a little bit of acting, and then obviously this worldwide stardom hits. Is that a contributing factor? We see it enough in big celebrities that there are issues, be it substance, mental illness, a confronting world and a confronting way to live, I think. I mean, Brad Pitt said that being a celebrity is like being a woman walking past a building site every day. You get whistled at the entire time. People yelling your name. A guy Ben Crow, who we've had on this show, he's a life coach and also famous for coaching Ash Barty as well. When they look at, back in the day, say 20 years ago, they looked at what people want in their life and what people need in their life. And 20 years ago, the number one thing was to have friends. Pardon the tie-in. Now, number one is fame.
Is it?
Number two is to be rich. And to have friends is down at number 16. So maybe that's where there's a bit of an issue with what I see. When I see a story like that and I see what younger people these days want...
what they're aspiring to.
I mean, I'm not taking the pee when I ask you the question, but, I mean, you've obviously dealt with celebrity and the effects of being a celebrity and the intrusion to your personal life, which continues today. That would be hard, confronting and scary.
Yeah, I think it is, but I also think that it's not, battles with mental health or addiction aren't only the woes of celebrity. It's just that they are the stories that we know about. And I suppose with someone like Matthew Perry, he's been able to use his fame to be able to reach more people and try to help others. But yeah, I don't know. That makes me really sad that fame's above money.
I agree, but I think with fame, like when you can't be the person you want to be, and you're right, there's two different topics here, but you can see a clear crossover with, a level of fame. You can't help but think the tie-in and the fact that you lose the ability to be the person you want to be anytime you're in public. I mean, I could be crossing the line here, but it wasn't long ago that you drove out of your house and there was somebody that then followed you trying to take photos. And you thought to yourself, well, wherever I'm going to go, this guy's then going to follow me and take photos of me. So you went back into your house and stayed inside.
So I just stay home.
Now, to me that's unfair But that continuously would have an impact on someone, where all of a sudden you go, I can't do what I want to do anymore.
No.
I can't be the person I want to be.
And I think too, with someone like Matthew Perry, who has had his struggles, to not be able to do that privately and to have everybody pass judgment or comment or, throw their, 2 cents in. Without ever understanding the story in its entirety, I guess, is just is another level of judgment,
isn't it?
Yeah.
Did the challenges start during Friends? I don't know enough.
Well, I'm not sure when Friends started, but I think his battle with addiction has spanned 30 years. So I would imagine that these things existed and then were probably exacerbated by the fact that everyone was looking.
Like when you see a celebrity too who just decides to drop off the face of the earth because you never hear from them again, you completely understand why.
I think so.
Don't you? To hit that kind of public ownership.
Yeah. No, that's where you have issues with boundaries, I think, because you've had to share so much of your life with everybody, and Matthew Perry included. There's a whole generation, we were talking about it earlier, that felt as though they all grew up together and, bought houses and moved out of home and fell in love and did all of those things. And you forget that they are people with their own battles.
Fitzy and Whipper with Kate Ritchie is a Nova podcast. For more great comedy shows like this, head to novapodcast.com.au.